Hi guys, welcome to the ninth tutorial of this Java beginner series. So in this tutorial, I'm going to talk about keyword final. So final keyword you can use in three scenarios. So the first scenario you can use final is in um, with a variable. So final keyword with a variable. I'll show you an example. The second scenario is final keyword with a method. And third is final keyword with a class. Okay, so let's take a look at the first case. So in the first case, which is a variable, so let's say if I define a private modifier, doesn't matter, you can choose whatever you want. So let's say I choose private in this case. I talked about the private modifier in my previous videos. If you want to take a look at it, please go do so. So private, and I define as final, and I say, let's say it's a string, and I say it's string one. That's the name I give. And let's say I name it as one, two. And what I try to do is I try to change this value, right? So let's say I define a public static void method um, with a string argument. Uh, and now what I do is I try to change string one. Let's see. All right, first of all, it's going to complain that you can't access this variable, but I'm going to change it to static. Okay, but now look, I'm able to access it, right? I can access this variable here. I can see it here, but if I try to like change the value of it, it's going to complain. So it's going to say cannot assign a value to a final string. What does that mean? So what it means is that like, once you define a variable as final, that means that value is going to be a constant throughout this class. So you cannot change this variable anywhere. So once you define it as final, it can never be changed, and you can use the same value, which is 12, which is going to be 12 throughout. So this string one is always going to be 12. So that's what's going to happen once you declare a variable as final. I hope it's clear. The second scenario is when you define final with a method. So let's say if I define final with a method, let's say I remove this and I go here, I define private static. The reason I'm doing static because I want to call this method, whatever method I'm going to define now, I want to call it inside the public static void. And if the method is not static, then I can't call that static method within the main method, right? So the private static, let's say I do void and I say call, and in this I'm gonna say system out. So I'm gonna say system out system.out.println. I'm gonna say hello, for example, right? And I can call this main. In main I can do call, and I can run this class. Let's see, run it, right? If I run it, I expect hello, which is fine. This is what I expect because this is what the method is, right? So let's say if I put final here, what's going to happen, right? So if I do hello final here, run it, and I still expect the same value. So this is fine because you can define a method as a final and nothing is going to happen. You can do whatever you want. But inside what's happening is that like when you define a method as final, that means you cannot override this method. So let's say you have another class and the class extends this tutorial line, and then you may want to like override this method, but this tutorial line doesn't want you to override this method. In that case, what you can do, you can define a method as final, which means that the class that's going to be extending this tutorial line can never override the implementation of this method. So this implementation will always be the same. So that's why you declare a method as final, because you don't want the class, the subclasses that are extending this class to change the implementation of this method. Okay, I hope it's clear. The third case is the final keyword with a class. So if you define a class as final, let's say if I do is final here, just like in the case of a method, if I define a method as final, which means I cannot override it, pretty much the same thing happens here. When you define a class as final, which means you cannot extend this class. So if I have another class, let's say tutorial 10, whatever it is, and I try to extend tutorial 9, I won't be able to do it because I declared that class as final. I hope it's clear. So for this, so this acts like a constant. So it's a constant, cannot be changed. So here cannot be overridden. So I'm going to put the highlights here, and this is cannot be extended. So I hope it's clear. I hope this gives you more information about the final keyword. This type of question is usually asked in an interview. I've seen personally that I've seen this sort of question in many interviews. So it's good to have it's good to have knowledge about this, what exactly is happening. I hope it's clear. Just wait for my next tutorial, guys. Thank you so much.